Hello, everyone. This is Tasin, and welcome to one of our webinars. Today's webinar, we have our topic on optimizing the Litify experience end-to-end case and data management integration. And we have DBSync, one of our best partners, as our featured partner today, joining us. So let me just share the slide. So before starting, these are some of the prizes we have for our participants, attendees. Three winners of participants and attendees will get Grubhub lunch coupon. One winner will get a free org architecture review. We'll be just going in your org and see the whole org and see if there is any issue, if everything is working well for you, and it's going to be fully free no matter how many hours it takes. And we'll be giving one winner a free issue fix handled by Micronetbd team. So we'll be going in your org. If you have any issue, just let us know. We're going to go and fix it. Our today's guest speakers are Connor Evans, George Ayub, and Jessica Lockhart. So first, let me introduce Connor. Connor is the Vice President of Growth from DBSync. Like I mentioned before, DBSync is one of our best partners, and Connor is the main person from there. He always took care of us whenever we needed him. As a partner, I cannot tell enough about Connor. He's the great guy, and we are having many, many projects going together, and we have done many implementations together. And it's a very, very great pleasure to have Connor on board. So let me just introduce Connor. I cannot say I cannot finish it. It's going to take me hours to talk about Connor. So let me just introduce Connor.
Awesome.
Connor,
You're way too
welcome.
kind, man. You're way too kind. I really appreciate that intro. Can you do all my intros? Like if I go to a party, can I bring you along?
100%, 100%, man, all the time.
I love it. Awesome. Well, nice to meet everyone. Really excited about today's webinar. As Tossin mentioned, I'm Connor Evans, VP of Growth over at DBSync. I've been with DBSync for about 10 years now. My role involves leading initiatives that help organizations streamline operations and scale efficiently through seamless integrations. In my tenure, I've had the pleasure of guiding about 200 different businesses, and that's across various industries. But today we're focused on legal, and I'm really excited to bring up George Ayub. He's actually the founder of Micronetbd, and Micronet is one of our favorite partners to work with. They're experts on the Litify platform and experts in technology in general. I love those guys. I love their office. Everyone on the team is phenomenal to work with. And George, it's great to bring you up.
Thank you, Connor. And actually, Connor, we cannot say enough about you because I have worked with many, many stakeholders like yourself across different partner channel at a senior level. Most of the time, either you're strong on the business side or the technical side, but Connor is a rare exception where Connor really understands the business side of our clients' needs, but he understands technical side enough too. So it's really rare to see someone like that at a senior level at a large company like DBSync. So it's been a pleasure working with Connor and his team, and like together we've solved complex integration problems for so many different companies. But in general, for Micronet, we've been in business for a long time. I've been in Salesforce architect for over a decade. We solve business problems for various verticals. Legal is one of our main verticals. We also, have been implementing Salesforce and building Salesforce App Exchange apps for a long time for different industries. And we're located central New Jersey here in Hamilton. And yeah, most of our staff works out of the office here.
And it's like the coolest office I've ever been to, by the way, guys. Their conference room is so cool. I mean, George, it looks like you are in a Salesforce Ohana floor room right now. It's so cool.
It was influenced by it because we obviously work closely with Salesforce, and that invited me to their Ohana floor. It was like, oh my God, it's beautiful. So I'm like, obviously Salesforce can invest way more, but we try to do what we can here in our HQ and also our other branch offices. We try to kind of keep the same theme going.
Definitely. I love it. Awesome. Well, thank you, George. Now I'd like to bring up Jessica Lockhart. She's the business intelligence director at the Jeffcoat Firm. Now, Jessica's gone through a multi-year Litify implementation. I know that included integrating with DBSync. She's one of our really valued customers. Very happy to be having her voice on this webinar, her perspective. Jessica, would you mind introducing yourself?
Yeah, thank you so much, Connor. And thank you, George, also for having me on today. Connor said I'm the business intelligence director at the Jeffcoat Firm. We are a personal injury and criminal defense practice out of South Carolina. And in that firm, I really lead our data strategy, systems administration, and integration, and a lot of our operational planning. Just a little bit of background. We started our Litify migration in 2019 and went live in 2021. And since go live day, we've been using the Litify QuickBooks integration via DBSync, and I'm just happy to be here to help people, think through how to use that sync to better their decision making, really help them recoup their cost efficiently, and learn how to calculate some real return on investments for their operational spend.
Love it. Yeah, I'm so excited to have you on, Jessica. And I think it's one of the coolest things I've seen is seeing a law firm have a business intelligence director, because you don't necessarily see that all the time. And it's such a valuable asset for operations. It's just cool. I love that. Awesome. So today we're going to discuss a few key points. We're going to talk a little bit about the challenges that folks are experiencing in case management and data synchronization. We're going to look at the impact that these challenges can have in creating data inefficiencies and what those mean down the line for firms. We're going to talk about how DBSync and Micronet as partners really work together to create a fully scalable automation platform and customizing the Salesforce environment so that it really works for you. And, Jessica, I know it takes time to get that going. And you've had that experience of multi-year implementations. How important is it to go into this with the right partner and the right mindset and buy-in from the firm?
Yeah, exactly. So, it took us, like I said, it took 2 years. And even after that 2-year period, we still had probably a good 6 to 8 months where things were just still not quite right. And when you go live with something like Litify, if you want your team bought into a new software, entirely new process, you need to have it as close to correct as possible. So I cannot emphasize enough the importance of having a partner that understands legal, that understands those processes, and that can help you get the right things built so that your team actually buys into using the product and doesn't feel, more stressed out by it for those first, really 12 months of having the product in-house.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. Software implementation firms are a dime a dozen, but firms that have the expertise in the legal vertical, I think are so valuable when you're talking about implementing any solution really for a law firm. And George, that's one thing I really value that Micronetbd brings to the table. It's really unique.
Yeah, it's what happens with any implementation. You covered it exactly correctly, Jessica and Connor, is you need those elements. You need to have a strong understanding on the business side for sure. You need to also have a strong understanding on the architecture of the product you're using, right? Having those two elements and also experience in that field. And I would also say a lot of firms have that, but then where things go wrong is you create a scope at the beginning with senior management of both sides, and that scope gets signed. And later on, I've seen a lot of other firms would be trying to do a lot of change requests and a lot of battles about the scope and what's in the scope and what's not in the scope. And what ends up happening is the architecture, we find out more and more about how the client system is as implementation goes on. So having a partner who's flexible and not strictly stuck to a scope and be able to adjust and not nickel and dime for every piece. I think all of those components are very important for a successful implementation.
Absolutely. Well said. And we'd like to open it up to the audience now. Just a quick question for you guys on which area do you find the most challenging when managing cases and data in Litify? I have my assumptions about what most folks are going to respond, but let's go through them. So first, we have option A, syncing data across platforms. Then we have option B, managing cases efficiently from intake to resolution. We have C, automating manual or repetitive tasks. D, gaining real-time visibility into case progress. E, ensuring data accuracy and reducing duplication. And F, customizing Litify to better match your workflows. Now, because we have Jessica here, I'm going to have to take advantage of that. You've got a great perspective on this, given that you've been there and you've gone through it. What would you say are the areas that are most challenging when managing cases and data in Litify?
Yeah, I'm going to say it's probably A and E. So, for us, I'm thinking back to prior to implementing Litify, we had a very manual check requesting process. So for a lot of those contingency firms out there, you understand the struggle of cutting all the prepaid client cost checks, medical records, investigative reports, court filings. And we would, send an email, sometimes pop by the accounting office and say, hey, I need a check for this amount for this payee, and it's for this client. And sometimes that information would make it back to our CRM, and sometimes it wouldn't. Right. And so what would happen is we would get to the resolution on a case and we wouldn't have all of the expenses from everything we'd paid out tied to that matter in our CRM. We would, process the resolution, we would cut their check, and then we would realize, oh no, in QuickBooks, we had 3 other checks we didn't recoup costs on.
Oh, geez.
So if you think about the number of checks, some firms are cutting hundreds of checks a week, sometimes hundreds a month. Even just a couple of those not ending up in your CRM can mean thousands of dollars lost across the year. And so really having information in your CRM tied to cases is so important. It's important for visibility, but it's also important for real dollars, right? Because you could be losing money in unrecoverables by not having them tied to matters correctly.
Love it. Thank you for shedding some light on that. It's so refreshing to get a real perspective.
We have a couple of comments. Karen Reynolds said A and E, and same thing that Jessica also said. And Ryan said B, D, F, E, C, A. Rachel, everything pretty much. And Rachel said A, E, F. So yeah, if you want to take on that.
Oh yeah. No, that's great to see. And it does seem like everyone kind of shares the same pain points that you've experienced, Jessica, with A&E coming up in every single answer.
Yeah, like syncing data across platform. So we integrate obviously within Litify space, but we also work on health and government and many other sectors. And data integration, no matter what space you're in, you got to work with the right data architects to make it work. It's not, a lot of people think they know and it's simple, but whenever you're integrating multiple systems, especially if they were operational before you integrated, you'll have data that needs to be mapped out. And it's not just as simple as you have an ABC company versus ABC Corp. How do we map that? Yes, a lot of people can handle those simple strategies, but then you'll also have duplicates in both systems. So you have things named differently. You have companies that are named similar. You have duplicate entries. Maybe some entries don't have address. And so you have all kinds of data variations. So you kind of need to work. You have to make sure the folks you're trusting with, like, they are focusing highly on that initial mapping. Otherwise, anything you build on top of it, you're going to struggle.
Yeah, George, that's a great point. And that's one of the things that has to be considered in any integration project, right? Is what is going to be the master data source? And look, in a perfect world, we'd be implementing an integration at the same time Litify is implemented, and at the same time you're going live with QuickBooks, so that everything's synced up and you don't have any of these issues, ever. But the reality of the situation is we're coming in after QuickBooks has, been the account system for 5 years, 10 years, sometimes 15 years. They started using Litify maybe a year ago, 2 years ago, 3 years ago. And they've gotten to this stage where you can't possibly continue scaling, labor hours and headcount to accommodate all of these different account processes and data entry that has to happen. So when we're coming in, it's like you said, there's ABC Corp and there's ABC Space Corp, and differences need to be thoroughly accounted for. So auditing how these naming conventions are done in your different systems, finding a unique identifier. We're lucky on the QuickBooks side that we can take, customer ID, create a field on the account level in Salesforce, tie those together, let people know that, okay, moving forward, any updates that are happening on the QuickBooks side, if that's going to be the source of truth, we'll
Yep.
pull back over to Salesforce or vice versa, depending on the business process. But yeah, I'm curious, Jessica, did you guys have to go through anything like that on your end?
We did a massive cleanup because we were coming from a different CRM where we had a whole set of unique identifiers for clients in the CRM. We were using the client's name and parts in QuickBooks, and then we were moving everything over to Litify, which we know has its own unique identifier. So we had to do some massive cleanup. Actually, we did it on our QuickBooks so that it would match our Litify moving forward. But yes, you're exactly right, Connor. If you can do those two integrations and launches simultaneously, it's excellent.
Nothing better.
Nothing better. But realistically, most people are going to have to do a cleanup in one system or the other. And for us, we cleaned up QuickBooks. But once we did it, our processes ran smoother. We had that sort of visibility. And so, it's a necessary evil if you want to be able to grow and scale with these systems.
And what we have seen is a lot of firms that are migrating from other legal systems. Like a lot of systems don't have a structure in there. Like it will allow you to use the same fields or in multiple different ways. Like for example, like needles is one of the common ones we see. Data structures all over the place. So when in some farms do the initial migration, they're really not, unless the QuickBooks is in scope. Even if QuickBooks is in scope, that's being handled by a different team member, most likely than the one doing the needles migration. So what is happening is unless you have an architect who is overseeing everything, what ends up happening in some firms is the data team is doing the migration from migration into Litify, let's say, from needles. And then in some scope milestone later on, QuickBooks integration comes in. So that migration, when that happened, needles is messy to begin with, but then there's some cleanup done to kind of fit it into the Litify architecture to some extent. But then at that point, you're really not thinking of how the data is in QuickBooks, right? And you're really not taking the time you're just focusing on migrating data from one system to the other, most of what the companies do, and not thinking of deduping and all the cleanups needed. So I think that leads to a lot of issues. So I think, just like I said, you had to do a 2.5 year long project to get it going, and so yeah, it all depends. Like the longest we took, like in implementing Litify from start to finish, the firms we implemented, I think longest implementation was 10 months. But I've heard horror stories from lots and lots of law firms that come to us afterwards, and we manage their instance in managed services, and 2 years, 3 years, 4 years, and it's because of the architecture. There was no architect in charge from day one, overseeing all the pieces, and different pieces got delegated to different teams, and no one's really thinking the holistic picture.
Yeah, George, I think that's a great point and really speaks to the power having quality partner who's gone through this before and takes all these considerations from the onset of the project. Because like us in our role, right, this is a great slide for this because we built the platform, we have the integration architecture, we have the connectors, and that's powerful. But unless you have someone taking point on a project and aware of all these considerations and has the ability to influence the business process, you're going to be stuck. You can't just turn an integration on and expect things to go smoothly without properly architecting the data in all of these disparate systems and having a solid business process in place behind it too.
Exactly. And your QuickBooks, mostly, you cannot just overnight just change your QuickBooks to meet the Litify structure, right? So many times QuickBooks is what it is, and those teams that have been handling it, the companies don't really want to mess with the QuickBooks. That's money, right? So you have to have the proper architectural mind. Like this client's QuickBooks is set up this way, someone else's QuickBooks may be totally different. So no two instances will be the same. So you have to kind of be creative in terms of, okay, this is how the Litify structure, how the data structure is, but then how do we structure the data around, maybe using custom objects, some other way, using the relationships where it now can properly synchronize with QuickBooks, right? So that type of having a strong architect in the project is so important for success. And every one of the clients that we ended up fixing, always root cause ends up being you're not necessarily a bad partner, but things were delegated to different resources, which is how it should be. However, there was no ongoing architectural oversight, and that's always the case where you can have a 10-month implementation or 3-year implementation.
Right. And garbage in, garbage out too. So
Yeah.
you have to make sure the data is good and usable.
Yeah.
And the other thing you said there, totally dependent on how they're running their QuickBooks. And we even get into these scenarios where different businesses will have multiple business silos. So they might be running off of 2 different QuickBooks files. We just did a project with you guys with a firm that had that scenario. So it's important to have a good architecture integration platform that can handle these different scenarios, but you need someone in the driver's seat who can get you from, square one to nirvana here.
So I think that's why anyone implementing, make sure not just a Litify firm, but someone also who has been implementing Salesforce for a long time and have strong Salesforce architectural oversight. Like we create apps like Litify, and we have apps in App Exchange that we manage for other people. So we have developers and architects. So that's why we're deep in the technical side of things as well as the business side, so we can tackle it. So we always have an architect assigned to a project of this complexity. But every time I try to figure out root cause of clients we cleaned up, other clients, it's always root causes. There was no, person overseeing from it with a enough architect background. So I keep hitting this point, but make sure, like, if you are working on the Litify project with another partner, make sure you have someone like me or at a senior level architect with at least 5 years experience, not just with Litify, but with Salesforce in general.
Yeah, absolutely. No, that's a great point. And let's talk a little bit about what the integration typically looks like. So when we're doing Litify and QuickBooks, a lot of the times a new matter is entered in Litify, that's going to trigger syncing. So we have data flows to accounting, document management, and client communications, and all systems updating in real time with no manual push needed. One of our core philosophies at DBSync is the best integrations are ones that you don't notice. So we have a lot of clients, they don't have to log into the platform. We push messages into Salesforce, letting you know the status of any of these records that have been synced. If there's ever an issue, what the issue is. And then you can get those notifications via email, via Slack as well for easy troubleshooting and reconciliation. But really the end goal is getting to a stage where that data is usable and you can report on it. So having dashboards that reflect the true business health instantly. And Jessica, I wanted to ask you, is this similar to the integration that was set up in your firm? Is this pretty much the process?
Yeah. So for us, and I will say we spent probably the first year or 2 with this integration just happy that the data points were pulling in and not really taking it to that last step. And I think that last step of actually using this data for something actionable is probably the most important part of this, because it's the part that can be easily missed, right? You go through the integration, the data's flowing, and you think, okay, good, we're good. Well, no, the next step is actually understand how to look at it and use it. So, I'm just thinking for us, there's a few reports we actually run off of the data we're feeding in from QuickBooks. And one of the things I was thinking about is we measure the case expense costs versus the actual recovery. So one of the things we're trying to do, make sure you don't have a bankrupt case, right? If you spend more to work it up than the client will net or than the firm will net, then you're not really working the case efficiently. We also look at sort of where in our pipeline all of our prepaid expenses are sitting. So if I spend $100,000 and all those cases are in treatment, that's $100,000 I'm not going to recover for probably 6 months.
Right.
So really thinking about the expenses that you're sending out, all of the money that you're paying, and how long it's going to take you to actually receive that money back, sort of manage your cash flow. And then last one is one that most law firms that I've worked with before haven't actually thought about yet, which is pushing your marketing spend into Litify so that you can track true return on investment for your marketing dollars, right? So a lot of firms They use intakes and matters in Litify. That means you have
Yep.
access to your source data. It means you have access to recovery data. And what's easy for most firms to stop at with their marketing metrics is, what is my cost per lead, right? I spent $10,000 on LSAs. I got X number of leads. But what you could actually start doing by pushing this information into Litify is saying, I spent $10,000 on LSAs. That produced 10 qualified leads, and each of those leads netted me $10,000. So now you can start actually saying, for every dollar I'm spending, here's the dollar I'm getting back, right? And I think that is the opportunity to take this integration and this data and go to the next level to really effectively scale your firm, right? It's not just reporting, it's really using it to drive decision making.
That's one of the coolest things
Yeah.
I've ever heard a law firm do.
Yeah.
I think you're making the case right now why every law firm should have a business intelligence director, because if they were operating with that kind of level of thought and intention behind their marketing efforts, it'd be a game changer.
And I'll add one thing, is just a little public service on that, is what Jessica just described. So we run into a lot of firms who come to us and they say, yeah, they're using Google Ads, Facebook ads, they're doing local service ads, they have their Google Tag Manager and all of that is set up. UTMs are set up on the Google side, and they're like, oh, you cannot really tie back advertising spend to the leads generated, and they have CallRail set up. And what happens is that they have invested hundreds of thousands of dollars in setting up all these systems like CallRail and other systems. What you have to make sure whenever you set those up, make sure you ask your vendor, did you make sure it's set up in a fashion so I will get the GCLID ID all the way into Salesforce? Because let's say you did a huge CallRail integration implementation, and then CallRail has multiple ways you can have those phone numbers. And one of the things, they have what they call site pool, where it's a dynamic group of phone numbers. So, and there's other mechanisms. So if you use the wrong mechanism, CallRail cannot really give you the GCLID ID. What Jessica just described, you'll never be able to get to that level if your implementation was wrong. And undoing that CallRail implementation, that is major investment. So make sure, again, whenever you get these tools implemented, it's extremely important to make sure that each of these pieces have the proper Google Click ID flowing all the way into your Salesforce Litify. Otherwise, you won't be able to get to what Jessica just did.
How insane was the process of setting that part up?
So fortunately, we had a marketing director who took lead on the CallRail part, so I did not have to personally handle that. However, the actual integration, once the CallRail is set up correctly, is not that difficult for someone who has like familiarity with those sorts of things, right? So a partner like George is probably excellent to help you get those connections set up. And then once your stuff is feeding in, we have some custom objects for our marketing spend and some formula fields. But again, to George's point, the right architecture, the right architect to work with you, the right partner, this is something that firms can do. They just need the right person in the seat to help them do it.
Yeah, I think when we're talking about the integration side of things, so often people are focused on the manual data entry part and, how many labor hours am I going to save? And they're doing an ROI analysis on that side of things, but they're not considering what you can do once all of this data is connected, unified, and gives you that visibility into the actual health of your firm.
No, that's exactly right. I mean, if you're not using the data in the way we're talking about, you're kind of guessing, right? And we did that for years, right? We're a law firm that's been around for 26 years now. And for a large part of it, we probably made a lot of decisions based on what we felt like was producing quality leads, right? And so now that we have real data, we can put the money towards the sources that we know will produce highly qualified leads and high returns. So yeah, you could, right, you're going to use it to
literally report against the payments by
Correct.
Lead source. Yeah. Yep. And you've got an equation now, and you can test, okay, how much does this scale?
Exactly.
Yeah. I love it. That's awesome. All right, so let's talk a little bit about one of the coolest things I think George's team has done with our DBSync platform. And we've got a lot of partners that like to implement our templates And the buck kind of stops there. And that's fine for certain business use cases. But George, one thing I want to say that your team did is this mass deposits application. And I've never seen anything like it. It really took the Litify template that we had built out and took it 10x in terms of the operational efficiency. Can you talk a little bit about what that looks like?
Sure. So what Jessica was discussing, right, with the integration, what we just discussed up to this point, you have these expenses that are, instead of them getting lost, now they're sinking into QuickBooks. So that part, one-on-one, you're going in and tracking expenses, great. All of those are now nicely set up. It's working well. So we had a farm, and then a few other farms had a use case where, well, we have these hundreds of checks we're getting every day. So we have to go to the specific matter and specific record and then do the deposit. And then that will flow into QuickBooks. So if you're getting hundreds of checks, right, you have a couple of options. You can go into QuickBooks, enter it, but then you have to reverse integrate that back into Litify, or enter in Litify. If you're entering in Litify, then you have to go to each record, apply it to that specific record. It's a huge manual pain in the neck. And this problem doesn't exist for every farm, like only farms that are getting lots and lots of checks in. And so we said, okay, how can we make this process where we give them an interface where they can easily enter the data, and then we go and figure out where it should apply to, right? And then suggest that automatically, and then user can also edit that. So instead of having to go into specific records under a matter and go find it and apply and do it 100 times, that this application allows you to be on the one page where you can apply all the incoming payments. And like we said at the beginning, like, we're going to have giveaways for those of audience who stay all the way through the webinar, and we're going to be doing a drawing afterwards, and we'll be giving away a GovHub gift card. We'll have free org review, meaning we'll go in and do an architecture review of the org to see, okay, where is your org in it? Like, we kept talking about the architecture, and so we'll do an architecture review, and we'll say, and that's free of charge, and say, okay, this is what we see in your org. Also, we'll do one issue fix for one of the winners. So winners will be notified. Our team will notify it. So whenever you register for the webinar, hope you provided your phone numbers and information. If not, feel free to leave your information in the comment. We'll reach you and let you know about how we can get you a gift card, etc. We'll get you all that.
Yeah, a lot of good prizes there. That issue fix is huge. That's really cool. You guys are willing to do that. What if the issue is their entire Litify implementation?
Obviously within reason, right?
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
Just messing with you.
Yeah, no, we'll do one issue, because we just want, if folks are struggling with a lot of business problems and they get burned by a lot of firms, and everyone says, oh, we can do this. So it's best to kind of, so we figured that's a good way to get people to understand the architectural needs, right?
Absolutely.
Right, firms. Any questions we can cover from the audience while we are here?
Awesome. Currently, let me see if there are any questions. So yes, you can summarize, George, Connor, and Jessica, and we are almost at the end.
Yeah, definitely. Thanks, Dawson. It's been great talking to you guys today. I get really excited about these topics. And George, it's always a pleasure connecting with you. Jessica, I can't stress how much value you brought to this. Really loved all of your insights, and especially the conversation around what you do with the data once you have it all synced. So thank you so much for joining. And we definitely value you as a DBSync client and as a great partner in this webinar for sure.
Yeah, thank you guys so much for letting me chat.
Absolutely.
I want to thank Jessica also, because you're a perfect use case of, you had gone through multi-year implementation with another firm, and you struggled, and then you got it fixed the hard way, right? And then you understood your business side of things, so you were eventually able to get that all squared off, and also have the marketing side connected properly into the instance, which we see a lot of top farms, have that messed up, and then it's properly flowing into QuickBooks. So you have a ideal journey from start to finish. You came from Needles, which is the most common migration we do, right? And
Yeah.
from Needles to Litify, and you also have this integration. So it's a perfect client storyline. And so I think anyone considering migrating to Litify or other systems, I would say Jessica would be a perfect person you should probably talk to.
Yeah.
Because she'll tell you the same things we're telling. Since we're doing it as a business, you may not, unless you know us. Like people who know me in the industry, they know like we don't nickel and dime, and very straightforward and no BS kind of person. But and that's how my team is too. But I think people will feel comfortable talking to someone like you, Jessica. I think you have gone through the entire path, which many law firms are making mistakes every day, doing the wrong things.
Yeah, no, and I'm happy to talk to anyone about it, especially if you have specific circumstances that you want to talk
Yeah.
through, because we've probably gone through it. So happy to chat offline.
That's incredibly nice of you, Jessica. Seriously, I appreciate you giving us your time for this too, because again, having this conversation, just me and George, is one thing, but hearing from someone who's experienced the other end of that is super valuable.
And Ryan is also saying Jessica is amazing. Thank you.
We've got a Jessica fan club now.
Yeah.
Awesome.
Awesome. I just have one more minute, like to show the attendance the contact information for DBSync and Micronet. So Connor, if you want to take your time and just explain, like about the contact, how to contact easily to you.
Yeah, absolutely. If anyone's, curious about learning more about our platform, whether it's data integration, data replication, we do a lot more than just, Litify and QuickBooks integrations. So feel free to reach out. We have our office number there as well as our sales email. But really, if you want to get Litify integrated, I'd suggest you reach out directly to George and the Micronet BD team. They're my favorite partner to work with, and I don't know anyone who's more equipped to help in these scenarios.
Thank you,
And
Connor.
George, if you
And
want to take your chance and just give us
no,
the
yeah,
attendees the contact information, please.
yeah. So, reach out to us. I mean, if anyone wants to take down the barcode or scan the barcode, but very easy to reach us. Just you can reach us through our website or just emailing customer service at micronetbd.org, or you can call us. Either way, any of those things work. And with DBSync, we really a solid tool, not just for Litify and QuickBooks, but we use it to integrate like complicated EMR systems, right? And way more other for other verticals too. We use DBSync, and it's a very reliable tool. So a lot of times people, Salesforce has a MuleSoft and other tools 20 times more expensive, and so and DBSync is reasonably priced, and every time clients love it. So I'm not saying it just because we're partners with obviously Salesforce as well, and DBSync, and Salesforce has many other tools that are great, but this specific segment integration wise, from a technical standpoint, DBSync tool really helps us implement it correctly. I mean, we can implement with any tools, but I know like when we're using DBSync tool, it's reliable. Plus, the actual team behind the scene, from developer to other resources, they're really easy to get hold of. Like if something back end is messed up with MuleSoft, good luck getting hold of Salesforce's tier 2 or tier 3, right? I mean, even as a partner. But with DBSync, I can give Connor a call. He'll quickly call the head of dev team, and there you go. Like
Connor is already
that's as
tier
easy.
one.
So
That's awesome. Thank you so much, guys, for joining today. And like I said, we have three winners, actually three prizes, not three, altogether is going to be five. Three GrabHub winners, one org review, free org review, and one issue fixing from Micronetbd team. So hopefully we're going to be sending you an email with the lucky winners soon. And for now, this is the end of our webinar. Thank you so much, guys, for joining. Thank you.
thank you guys.